Hi, today in this video we're going to go through writing fee paragraphs. So these are used for analytical commentaries and short answer tasks in English language. And this is a way of structuring your responses, so on a sentence level and on a paragraph level, to make sure that you're writing analytically rather than descriptively. All right, so fee stands for feature, evidence, explanation. I'm going to take you through each one, what to look for, how to do it, and then how to put it all together as well. Okay, fee paragraphs help us to remain analytical in our writing. It stops us from being descriptive or retelling what's happening in the text. Instead, this structure helps us to actually analyze the text. Okay, so we're going to start with feature. So this is where you name the features that you're talking about, and they should all come from the meta-language list in the study design. I'm going to give you a list of all of those terms a little bit later on in this video. Number 2, evidence. This is where you provide an example from the text where this feature has been used. This should be a quote, and it should also be supported by at least one line number. If it's repeated throughout the text, you can include several line numbers too. Then number 3 is the explanation. This is probably, they're all extremely important, but the explanation is where the real analysis happens. So this is where you explain how the feature and the quote you've provided, how it's important to the text. Okay, so starting off with the feature, what kinds of features can I analyse? What should I be looking for in a text? Okay, so as I said before, they should be taken from the meta-language list in the study design. There's no set rules about which features you should discuss. You just need to read the text and make sure that you've determined the most important features of the text. The way that you can identify important features in a text is by thinking about the following questions. So, which features are most commonly used in this text? Are there features that, continually are being used over and over again throughout the text? Which features help to create the register? Which features help to support the social purpose? Which features help to maintain consistency? So that could be consistency within the text or sticking to the conventions of a particular text type. Which features help to support the function? And which features demonstrate something about the relationship between participants? Now, this is not a comprehensive list of questions that you can ask yourself, but these are good places to start. Okay, so I've included examples from the study design. So this is just the meta-language list. It breaks it up into subsystems. These are the kinds of things that you should be looking for in texts to analyse. Okay, so I'm just going to run you through each one. I won't read them aloud. You can pause it and read through them yourselves. So this is for phonetics and phonology and morphology and lexicology. Here we have the meta-language list for syntax and for semantics. Here we have the list of meta-language for discourse. And then this is other meta-language. A lot of this is not a particular feature like register, for example. You would use features from the other lists that I've showed you to analyse the register, but there are also some features on this list that you might be able to use, like colloquialisms, for example. That is a specific feature that you can locate in a text. Okay, on to part 2, evidence. So what can I actually use as evidence? What should I be looking for? All right, this is the easy part. So this is basically just checking off that you have included quotes and line numbers in your response. Remember that your quote should always be the absolute minimum amount of words that you can use to demonstrate an example, okay? We don't want heaps of, we don't want paragraphs worth of quotes in your analysis, because that's not analysis. That's just rewriting the text. So for example, if you pause here, have a read through these 5 lines of a text, and if you're looking for an example of listing, what might your quote look like? So I want you to read through this. So pause here, read through the text, and pick out, if you were writing a paragraph on listing, what would you use as your quote? Once you're done, come back. Okay, so I have put a box around what I would use as the quote. So I've got useful, simple, effective, trustworthy, and fun. Okay, that's it. That's the whole quote, because that is the example of listing. Okay, we don't have how can we make skincare as useful, simple, effective, trustworthy, and fun, blah, blah, blah. because the first part of that line is not an example of listing, so we don't need to include it. So that's how you can cut it down to the shortest possible amount of words. So in a sentence, it might look like, in line 2, Foster Blake uses listing, useful, simple, effective, trustworthy, and fun, in order to blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you could start off your sentence in that way. You'll notice as well that I've used the author's name instead of a generic, like just generically saying the author, or in line 2, listing has been used, blah, blah, blah. I've named her, I've included her in my sentence. And that just helps to make your writing a little bit more specific, and it's very, very clear that you are talking about this particular text, and it can only be about this particular text. Okay, so that's where I've got the first two parts. So I've named the feature, listing, which is highlighted in pink, and then I've got the two parts that are necessary for providing your evidence. So I've got the line number, and then I've got the quote. Okay, on to part 3. This is the explanation. So once I've got my feature and my quote, how do I actually analyze it? What's the part that makes it an analysis of the language? This is where you explain why you think the feature and quote that you've chosen is important to the text. So you should be answering one of the following questions. Why has this feature been used, and what is the effect of this feature meant to be? Okay, so they're obviously very interrelated questions. You're really focusing on the why. Why this feature in this text? Your explanation should relate the feature back to one of the big discourse features like register, social purpose, function, mode, audience, relationship between participants, all of those things that we've talked about in analysing pieces of discourse. Okay, so that also could be things like coherence and cohesion. Okay, so this is, again, it's not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the things that you can link your features and quotes back to help you actually create an analysis. All right, so on the next few slides, I've included a text. I'd like you to read through it in your own pace, and once you've finished, we'll go through how you could actually write a fee paragraph on this text. Okay, so now we've read the text, we're going to look at writing a fee paragraph. So the first step to writing a fee paragraph is to choose your feature. I'm going to write about collocations because I've noticed that collocation is used quite consistently throughout this text. There are so many other features that you could choose. This is just one that I've chosen as an example. Okay, step 2 is to find a quote that demonstrates this feature. So the collocation that I'm talking about is skincare, and that is from lines 2, 14, 28, and 31. One of the reasons why I've chosen to do a collocation as the basis of my fee paragraph is because I can see that this example occurs consistently throughout the text. So it's not just in the beginning, it's not just in the end. We can see that it's right at the start, it's in the middle, and it's the end of the text as well. So it's used consistently. That gives me an indication that this is a relevant thing to be talking about in this text. The third thing I need to do is explain why this feature is important. So I've identified 2 ways that collocation is important in this text. The first is that it helps to maintain the semantic field. And the second is that it helps to make the text cohesive and thus coherent. Now I've got the 3 sort of ingredients for a fee paragraph. Let's put it all together. Okay, so what should it look like when I put everything together? Here's my example paragraph. Foster Blake uses collocations such as skincare, lines 2, 14, 28, and 31 throughout the text. The repeated use of skincare helps to maintain the semantic field of the text as it reiterates the main focus of her beauty company, skincare. Additionally, the lexical choice of a collocation assists Foster Blake to maintain cohesion in her text and thus also contributes to the creation of a coherent text. Okay, here I've highlighted where I've done the different parts of fee. So in blue you can see that's where I've done the F, that's the feature. I've named the thing from the study design, from the meta language list that I'm talking about. In green is all of the places where I've included my evidence, so quotes and line numbers. And then in yellow, that's where I have done the explanation. So in the first section, it helps to maintain the semantic field, and then I've explained kind of how it does that. Okay, so that's the reason why collocation is important, because it maintains the semantic field. In the second part, I've used the same example, and I've said it also helps to maintain cohesion. Okay, and thus makes it a coherent text. So that's the explanation of why it's important in that particular case. Okay, just a couple of tips, some things that you need to remember when writing and editing fee paragraphs. Editing is a really big part of fee, because that's where you go over what you've written and double check and make sure that you have included all three aspects. And these are some extra things that you can look for when you're doing your editing as well. So the first one is to always use the author's or the interlocutor's names consistently. This helps to make sure that it's very clear to your reader that you're writing about that particular text and you're not writing generally about text in general. It really helps you maintain some focus in your writing. Try and analyse features from the beginning, middle and end of a text. So this is more relevant to writing analytical commentaries, but you don't want to write all of your paragraphs about the start of a text, or you don't want to write all of your paragraphs about the end of a text. You want to make sure that you're writing on features throughout the text, so we can see, so that the reader of your piece can see that you have engaged with the text as a whole, not just little parts of it. My final tip is to use verbs such as uses, demonstrates, supports, assists, aids, helps and creates to help you analyse what a feature has been used for. They will help you write analytically rather than descriptively, because you can't write creates, for example, collocation, creates, and then not finish the sentence. You've actually, by using that verb, you're being forced to explain what the collocation is being used for. So have a think of some other verbs that you might be able to use that have a similar sort of effect, and keep a list of them and use them in your editing process. Go back and add more of them in, because they are really great to use, because they help to force you to actually do that analysis rather than just describing what's happening in the text.